Good morning, I'm Chris Fox. Welcome to the first video in the How to Edit Your Novel series. So this is a follow-up to the How to Outline Your Novel series, which quite a few people have enjoyed. But in the comments, most of you said, hey, you know what? I've managed to finish a novel. I've got this draft and now I have no idea what to do. So in this video series, we're going to tackle each of the steps involved in editing, and it's actually not as complex as most people think. I wish I had known some of these tips years ago. So I do what I call one-pass editing. And that pass does have several pieces, but over the course of between 1 and 2 weeks, depending on how long the novel is, I edit the entire thing. I start at the beginning and I go all the way through, and when I'm done, that novel is ready either to be turned over to beta readers or to my editor if I'm going to be using an editor for that particular book. The first phase of this is the read-through, which is very, very straightforward. We're going to start with that. And what's involved is pretty simple. This is my favorite part because it is so easy. You simply read the book. Start on page 1 and go through it. And as you're going through it, you are allowed to do things like, fix typos. But you're going to want to remember that your goal here is not to edit the novel as you're reading. You're basically just seeing what you've got. So what I'll do, and we'll see this in the next section of the video, is go chapter by chapter, and as I think of things that need to change, I will make notes files and append them to that document. So you're going to see that in the next part of the video. And so by the time I'm done with this read through, I have dozens and dozens of notes, and I'm ready to actually start the content edit. So we'll get to that in the next video, but for the first video, I'm just going to show you a very simple method of taking notes while you were doing the read-through on your novel, kind of what you should be looking for and how to get it ready for that actual edit that you'll be doing. Okay, so as you can see, I have a number of triangles next to files in Act 1. You don't see nearly as many of these in Act 2, and you see almost none of them in Act 3. And here's the reason for that. So as I was writing the first draft, if I thought of something when I was in Act 3 that was relevant to the beginning, I would just come back here and jot down a quick note. And so you'll see, I've got a note here to address the time gap. Real simple stuff, but when I think of it, it's really handy for me to append that to a document. And what a lot of people will notice if you use Scrivener on a regular basis, there's an area for synopsis and there's another area for notes. So many people ask why I wouldn't just put this here rather than creating a new file. And that's because as I'm going through this, you're going to see these triangles disappear. So when I start the actual rewrite after I'm done with the read-through, I'll get to the end of this and then all these triangles go away. And that's how I know it's been dealt with. And anything that hasn't been dealt with is immediately apparent. I can see visually very quickly what chapters need to be modified. And that's super, super helpful, as you'll see as we go through the edit. So what I'm going to do right now, since I'm starting the read-through phase, is just go through this entire book. And by the time I'm done, you'll see triangles covering the entire thing, and you'll see a bunch of chapters like this. So there'll be not necessarily any text in it at all, or maybe just a paragraph, but these are the new scenes that are going to be added. I tend to write very light on the first pass, so the first draft of Void Wraith is only about 47,000 words, but what we're going to see is that should jump to 55 or 60,000 words as I add a bunch of new scenes to kind of help the flow, and then I also add description to the existing scenes. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the next section of the video, which for me is probably going to be a day or two from now after I've completed this read-through and added all of my little triangles. Okay, it is 2 days later. I have completed the read-through on the novel, and as you can see, it looks really messy now. You have a bunch of these triangles all over the place, a whole bunch of notes have been added, ranging from checking a specific character's description, does she match up in all the chapters, to my first opportunity in this book to describe how my Helios gates work. So what I was looking at as I read through this novel is two different things. First, this individual scene, each one as I was reading through it, what is it conveying and what is my purpose in the scene? Like, why did I write it? Why does this fit in the greater narrative and what purpose is it serving? How does it advance the plot? Is it showing things about how the characters are developing? And based on those answers, I would either cut the chapter or expand the chapter as necessary. I was also looking at how does the chapter fit in the overall flow, and is it adequately describing the things that it needs to describe? I tend to write very, very lightly on the first pass, as I mentioned before. And so a lot of what I'm doing here is saying, hey, Chris, you did a poor job of describing the Helios gate or this Primo library or whatever else is on the page, and you need to fix that. And so I'm going to scroll through briefly. You can see Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 all have a ton of notes now. And some of these are dealing with continuity issues. Some of them are plot tweaks that I thought of last minute as I was reading. Some of them are things that felt kind of abrupt. So I would read from one chapter to another and realize it felt like they didn't fit together well enough. And so as I considered it, I realized the best way for me to address that would be to drop in another chapter. So now I've got kind of a rough scaffolding around the book, and I understand what changes that I need to do. And since the read through is complete, I can now go back to chapter 1, and that's what we'll be covering in the next video, and actually go through each of these chapters and integrate these notes. And how we're going to do that is you just read what your note is, and then you go into the chapter and you start on word 1 and you go through it and you edit it like you probably have done a million times in your various projects, with an eye for integrating the things that you've noticed. So again, we'll do that and I'll show an actual sprint in the next video. But for this video, I wanted to keep it simple and keep it short and show you guys the basics of how you can handle your read through. That is how I recommend starting with your editing. Do a read through after you complete your draft. And that read through, guys, doesn't have to be immediate. If you want to set the book aside for a few weeks or even a few months, go ahead and do so. But make sure that you do that read through and try to identify holistically everything that you want to change before you start changing things. One of the mistakes that I made very, very frequently is I try to just start editing. I go into chapter 1 and just start rewriting it. And doing it this way, the method I'm showing you here, gives you a much better game plan and allows you to do this a lot faster and more efficiently than you would otherwise.